All right, so now that we've kind of covered basic font formatting, we're going to go ahead and head into lists a little bit. Lists are super useful. People use them all the time. And I think it's important that you know how they actually work and then how to customize them because we're constantly using them. So I've got a blank Word document open and you can tell that I'm in Word 2019, but you can be in any version. However, you do want to be in the installed version on your computer and not the 365 version, because the 365 version actually only allows you to apply a list and choose from the preset default settings. It does not allow you to be able to actually customize the list very well. So I'm going to start over here and I'm just going to go ahead and add some list items. Usually when you're talking about list items, you're talking about like, you know, what are the different bullet points or what are the different numbers of what you're doing? And it matters by which way you're going on what your content is on which type of list you're going to use. So if I'm going to be a step-by-step process, like I'm going to have step 1, hit enter, step 2, and step 3, I'm going to want that to be in a certain type of list. And you have the option of choosing bulleted lists or numbered lists. When you're doing this, because they're step-by-step processes, you're going to want to go ahead and choose a numbered list. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag to select my 3 items. Because these are only the 3 items on my entire document, I could also select all, which is holding down the control key on your keyboard and pressing A. That will select all 3. Once all 3 are selected, you're then going to go ahead and apply a numbered list to this because it is a step-by-step process. If you were like ranking things like your favorite animals or something like that, that would also be a numbered list because it's organized. It has an order to it. And that's why we would utilize those. When we have a bulleted list, that's when your items can be in any order. It doesn't really matter. It's just a list, right, of items. So that's more like when you go to the grocery store and you just have a bunch of things you need to get. Maybe you do organize them a little bit inside of that bulleted list, but it doesn't really matter what order you put them in your cart because you're going anyway and purchasing them. So in this case, we're going to do a numbered list. And I want you to, if you haven't already, pause the video here and go apply the numbered list by yourself. The numbered list option and the bulleted list option are found on the Home tab because they're one of the most commonly used features, and the Home tab has commonly used features. And they're in the paragraph group because they actually apply to the entire paragraph of text. And so in here, we have 3 options. We have the bulleted list option, you've got the numbered list option, and then you have what's called a multi-level list option. And that's where you have not just these main bullet points or these main number list items, but you have sub-list items that are indented inward and underneath the different main level items. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a numbered list item, and you'll see that automatically a couple things happen. It adds the numbers. It indents them in on my page, so it moves them in slightly. And it also removed line spacing. So the space between the different lines has disappeared. And I think that's important to note because those are the default settings of what a list does. And if you wanted those things back, you would need to manually go change those in like the paragraph settings and the ruler and indentations. So you can see that it automatically applies that there. What I'd like you to do is instead of it being 1, 2, 3, make it capital ABC with periods at the end. So pause here and go do that. So to get options for lists, you can go to the drop-down menu to the right of the list item in the ribbon, and you have a bunch of options. And their default settings, you can turn off numbering by choosing none. You can go and you can pick one of these options. You can see what the document's already utilizing, which in this case, it's utilizing the default 1, 2, 3. And then you have more options down at the bottom too. But we wanted that capital ABC with the period. And you'll see when you apply that, it'll apply to all 3 items. And then if you go down and you click after step 3, the beauty of a list is that when you hit enter to add a new list item, it'll automatically format with the item number or item bullet, and you can put step 4 here or whatever it may be. And that's important to note. When we hit enter again, my question to you is, how do you get out of the list? What do you do to leave the list formatting besides going up to this drop-down menu and choosing none? How can you do it quickly? And actually, how can you do it without even using your mouse? So I want you to see if you can figure that out real quick. There's a couple ways to get rid of list items. One of the most common ways people think of is to hit the backspace key because you're trying to remove it, right? And that's always what we do when we want to remove something to the left of our cursor, we hit the backspace key. But I want to show you that when you hit the backspace key, you're actually still at the 1/2 inch mark. And if I look up at my ruler here, which I know I have my rulers on and you probably don't, which is fine, we'll turn them on in a little bit, I can see that I'm actually not sitting on the margin of the page. The margin of the page is over here where the gray and the white meet, and that's where the edge of my page is. And in this case, I'm actually sitting 1/2 inch on my page lined up with the text of the list items. And that's not what I want. If I hit backspace again, so I've already hit it once to get rid of the list item, and if I click it again, you'll actually see you still won't be on the margin. You are actually 1/4 of an inch in on the page. And I think this is important to note because you would have to hit backspace 3 times in order to get out of the list item and back to the margin. I'm going to hit Control Z, hold down the Control key and hit Z a couple times because that does undo and takes me back to where I was. You can also click the undo button up here. And when I click undo to get back to the list item where I have the E there, this time instead of hitting backspace, I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard, and that will actually remove the list item and pop me all the way back out to the margin. And so I wanted to show that so that way you knew how to get out of a list, and that works with numbered lists, bulleted lists, multi-level lists, doesn't matter what it is. All right, so keep this document for the next lesson so we can continue learning about lists.